Have you ever wondered what would have happened if the Jedi had taken over the Republic? Have you ever contemplated the possibility of what would have happened if Mace Windu and his 3 Jedi friends had defeated Palpatine in his office, and then proceeded to go and take over the government? Well, Bantha crew, grab a glass of my galaxy-renowned Bantha brew, settle down with your pet Tauntaun, and let's dive right in, because that is what we'll be exploring today. What if the Jedi had taken over the Republic? Our story begins in a similar way to how it does in Revenge of the Sith. Mace Windu enters Chancellor Palpatine's office with his Jedi contingent, and he says that Palpatine is under arrest. He then tells Palpatine that the Senate will decide his fate, to which Palpatine responds the infamous lines, "I am the Senate." Chancellor Palpatine immediately blasts. The epic lightsaber duel ensues, and in this timeline, Agent Collar, Kit Fisto, and Sassy Tin still end up passing into the Force. However, Mace Windu deals ferociously, and eventually it gets to the point where Mace and Palpatine are confined in the corner of the senatorial office. Mace Windu blocks Palpatine's Force lightning as the Sith Lord unleashes a barrage upon the seasoned Jedi Master. In this timeline, before Anakin enters the office, Windu continues to push back heavily against Palpatine's barrage, and he does not give up. It takes all of Mace's willpower to utilize the dark side energy of the Chancellor against him with the Vapad, but in the end, he manages to outwork Palpatine. While Mace is less powerful than the Sith Lord, Palpatine had concentrated all of his power into one large blast of Force lightning. Mace is able to give a more sustained effort, and he immediately slays Palpatine when the Sith Lord expends his power. While this may be a little bit of an unlikely scenario, we're going to roll with it, just for the sake of moving the plot along. Following this, Mace Windu goes to sit at the desk of the Chancellor, and he looks over the skyline of Coruscant, ready to undertake the mission of rebuilding the Republic that he had discussed earlier with Yoda. The Chancellor was dead, and this was the Jedi's time to shine. How does this impact the rest of our story? Let's keep going and find out. Shortly after this altercation, Anakin bursts into the room, and he is absolutely astonished by what he sees. Mace sitting in the Chancellor's chair? Palpatine dead on the floor? What had happened? Anakin and Mace exchange angry words about how the Chancellor had been a Sith, but Anakin is upset that he is still a democratically elected politician, and Mace Windu had just killed him. He'd committed treason. Anakin believes that Mace has overextended the power of the Jedi, just like Palpatine said they would. Windu goes to Anakin and tells him to comply with his wishes, and then he orders that the young Jedi go along with the will of the Council or be banished from the Order entirely. Windu tells Anakin that his actions had been for the greater good of the Republic. Anakin grumbles, but he ends up complying. Order 66 in this timeline is never executed because Palpatine has died. Instead, following the killing of General Grievous, Mace Windu orders all of the Jedi generals back to the temple, and Master Yoda also obliges his wishes. While the Jedi leave and go back to the temple, the clone commanders are left in charge of the remaining conflicts. Mace convenes the council, and he advocates for the course of action that he had earlier, especially since the Chancellor had indeed been a Sith Lord. Yoda cautions against this, believing that the Jedi were stepping into an active role in government, and it would inhibit their connection to the Force. Anakin laughs at this, saying that the Jedi had already lost their way when they'd gotten involved with the war. Plo Koon, a Jedi who cares about his troops and the will of the Force, also cautions against this course of action, alongside Shaak Ti, who'd been in charge of overseeing the clone training on Kamino. Obi-Wan argues that while he disagrees with the idea on a fundamental level, because he stands for the democracy of the Republic, he thinks that it is a necessary evil in order to maintain galactic peace and return the Republic to a stable place. The Council votes, and it appears that most members agree with Windu. In this moment, Anakin, infuriated, storms out, saying that he can't support an organization that would undermine the Republic that it sought to serve. Anakin rushes off in a huff, and he quickly contacts Padme to tell her what's taken place. She's shocked, saying that she couldn't believe the Jedi would do such a thing. But Anakin tells her that it's true. Admiral Tarkin, following the death of Palpatine, scrambles to try and find out what had taken place. He assesses the security cameras in Palpatine's office and he sees that the Jedi have killed Palpatine. Then he knows what he needs to do. Tarkin orders a tactical strike from Delta Squad on the Jedi leaders. He knows that taking out the head of the snake could be an effective tactic to throw the Jedi into disarray, and it would provide an explanation of the retaliation from Republic leadership due to the killing of the Chancellor. Masamida, the interim Chancellor of the Republic, authorizes Tarkin's strategy upon hearing it in a briefing. When the Jedi make their decision to march on the Senate building, Yoda refuses to go with them. Instead, he remains at the temple, dedicated to the pacifism which he had tried to endorse before the war. Windu leads the Jedi Order into the Senate building, and they overwhelm the clone guards who are led by Commander Fox, captain of the Coruscant Guard. Rather than the clones overwhelming the Jedi commanders through the element of surprise, like what happened in Revenge of the Sith, the Jedi do the opposite, and with their mastery of the Force, they are able to take out the clones, despite being outnumbered. Obi-Wan and Plo feel immense guilt about killing their former brothers in arms as this happens. Meanwhile, Delta Squad goes to the temple in order to assassinate Yoda. However, while Yoda is meditating, he senses their presence. Even though they're ordered to kill him, Yoda gives them their chance to run away. However, being the honorable warriors that they are, who are dedicated to the preservation of the Republic, they still raise their weapons, saying that orders are orders. Yoda manages to escape by slicing their blasters and running away, which Delta reports to Tarkin. The Jedi overwhelm the clones in the Senate chambers, telling the senators that they will be momentarily taking control in order to establish a peaceful transition of power. While many senators disagree with this, there isn't much that they can do. Masamida hands the Senate over to the Jedi. During this time, the Jedi negotiate a peace treaty with the Separatists under the leadership of Obi-Wan, who is commonly referred to as the Negotiator, for good reason. Obi-Wan knows that they won't rejoin the Republic, so he agrees to allow them to secede, provided they remain close trading partners with the Republic in the future, and promise not to ever start such a large-scale conflict again. Anakin, who has now officially left the Order, can frequently be seen in the media decrying the Jedi and their undemocratic behavior, but respecting the fact that they had negotiated peace with the Separatists. When the Jedi continue to control the Senate after the war though, and when Mace attempts to nominate himself for Chancellor, Anakin starts to get suspicious. The words of Palpatine resonate with him about how the Jedi were just like the Sith, seeking to maintain their power and their own interests. At this point though, Padme gives birth to her children, which shifts her focus away from politics, along with Anakin's. Padme is unable to run for Chancellor because she has to be there for her children. However, she does endorse her good friend, Mon Mothma, for the position due to their shared commitment to maintaining pacifism and democracy in the galaxy. Anakin returns to the temple, and he visits the aged Grandmaster Yoda, who he still respects. Anakin asks him if he believes in what Windu is doing. Yoda shakes his head, but he says that he's too old to deal with such things at the moment, and that he believes the Force will allow it to play out as it should. Anakin convinces Yoda, along with Obi-Wan during his visit to the temple, to join him in removing Windu from the position of prominence in the Senate. He tells them that this had all been just crazy, and that they had overwhelmed a legitimately elected official. Now, even after the Jedi had completed their mandate of restoring peace, they still wanted power. Anakin asks if all of this had been worth it. Killing the clones, overtaking the government, and now using their power in order to further an agenda that was unrelated to the maintenance of peace that they had strived for at the beginning of this insurrection. Obi-Wan shakes his head no, saying that he had violated his principles, gone against what he believed when he had taken out those clone troopers. Yoda continues to remain silent, but his eyes tell the entire story. Both of them believe that what they've done is wrong, and that they need to rectify it. After Anakin convinces his Jedi friends to join him, he also convinces many clones which he served with during the Clone Wars, and were now serving the illegitimate government, to join him in his endeavor. Some of these clones are Rex, Cody, the Bad Batch, and a few other members of the 501st. Many are upset that Mace had ordered the killing of so many clones when the Jedi had raided the Senate building. Tarkin, Yularen, Krennic, and other prominent Republic military leaders also finally agree that the Jedi Order needs to be removed from political power. Tarkin, who had always disapproved of the religious order being involved in the war at all, is happy that Skywalker can finally see the corruption of the Jedi. Padme, while still believing in the missions and principles of the Jedi, can understand why Anakin is so angry with them. She opposes the idea of Mace becoming Chancellor. When election day comes, Mon Mothma is coronated as Chancellor with a majority of votes in the Senate, because many people feel the same way as Anakin and all of these other prominent figures in the military and in politics. Mace Windu was not meant to be a Chancellor. He was a religious figure, not a political leader. At this point, Windu becomes irate. He accuses the Senate of tampering with the election, and he once again threatens to bring the Jedi Order into the fold to deal with this illegitimate democracy. He'd become corrupted with the power that the Order had been given in the galaxy. It's in this moment when Anakin, alongside Yoda, Rex, Cody, Obi-Wan, Tarkin, and a bunch of other military members, all come out into the Senate and say that if Windu continues down this path, then the military would have to intervene. Mace says that Anakin has no real power, but Anakin tells him that Tarkin and Yularen do, especially when it came to insurrectionists like Mace. Mace says the Jedi would be better for the galaxy, and he wouldn't allow the Senate to be corrupted by the type of people that Palpatine had. Jedi in various pods in the Senate chamber, along with those seated in the hallway or the gallery, ignite their blades, prepared to defend their candidate for Chancellor. The clones that Anakin had recruited start to evacuate the senators, and in this moment, a conflict between Mace's Jedi and those seeking to uphold democracy begins. In the Senate chambers, lightsabers clash between Jedi who are loyal to Mace Windu and those who are loyal to Anakin. Laser blasts fly across the room as the 501st and many other clone troopers end up blasting at their former Jedi comrades in arms, upset about what Mace Windu had ordered them to do all those weeks ago. The senators are evacuated, but some are not. Some end up dying in the fray. One of the fallen is Senator Bail Organa from Alderaan. Padme narrowly escapes, happy that she's able to get out of the Senate chambers. Her children are still young, so both she and Anakin are incredibly pleased. At this moment, Anakin sees Mace Windu, and he knows what he has to do. He's been training a lot since the Jedi takeover of the Senate, and he has been working on improving his abilities in the Force on Naboo. He's learned a few tricks since he left the Order. Anakin hops down, and the two end up dueling ferociously. Anakin comments about how Mace had become the very thing that he swore to destroy, and he starts using his offensive Form 5 lightsaber combat style against Mace. Mace Windu, who is incredibly adept in the Force, but also an incredible duelist, manages to use Anakin's momentum against him, pushing Anakin to the side as they hop from Senate chamber to Senate pod to Senate pod. However, Mace Windu's key ability cannot be used in this situation. The pod, the use of an opponent's dark side energy against them, is something that Mace can't do with Anakin, because Anakin isn't using the dark side in this situation. All of his new tricks, all of the things that he's learned are light side techniques. So Mace Windu, who's accustomed to sparring dark side opponents, is a little bit taken aback. However, he still continues to put up an absolutely incredible fight against the young prodigy. In the end, what catches Mace Windu off the most is Anakin's use of Force judgment. This is a power that Mace never thought that Anakin would be able to master. However, he had underestimated the young Jedi. Anakin shoots the yellow blast of electricity from his fingertips, his non-mechanical hand, and Mace Windu is forced to block it, firing it back at Anakin. However, Anakin knows how to defend against his own lightning blast. He moves to the side, trying to avoid all of the incoming bolts. He also continues firing vivaciously at Mace Windu, telling him that he knows that he can only hold it off for so long. Because this isn't dark side energy, Mace is unable to use it against Anakin, and he must continue to just hold his lightsaber up, fighting back. Anakin pushes, and he pushes, and he pushes. He continues to use that Force judgment against Mace Windu. And because of that initial element of surprise, along with Anakin's incredible adeptness in the Force, eventually, Anakin is able to push Mace Windu's lightsaber from his hands. It falls with a clank to the bottom of the Senate chambers as the battle continues to ensue, and as clones fire at Jedi, trying to catch them off guard. Many of the clones are using stun blasts because they don't want to kill their old Jedi generals. However, some of them, still infuriated by what the Jedi had done during the end of the Clone Wars, manage to sneak in a few stray laser bolts at them. Mace Windu, who now doesn't have a lightsaber, is forced to rely on his adeptness in the Force to counter Anakin. He jumps, hopping from pod to pod to pod, once again forcing Anakin to be versatile and follow him. However, eventually, Anakin catches up with the older Jedi. He cuts off his hands and he holds his lightsaber to his throat. He tells Mace Windu that he is under arrest for crimes against the Republic and for treason, along with inciting an insurrection twice. At this, Mace can't do anything. He refuses to surrender, and he uses the Force, even though he doesn't have hands, to push Anakin backwards. Anakin, seeing now that Mace Windu still had weapons despite being unarmed, decides that he must do what is right for the Republic. He must go against his code in order to preserve the greater good. Because Mace Windu doesn't surrender, Anakin takes his lightsaber and stabs him through the chest. The older Jedi dies immediately, his legacy perishing with him. When Windu is defeated, and with Yoda, the Grand Master of the Order, participating in Anakin's forces, many of the Jedi end up surrendering, seeing that they had compromised their morals for political power, and for a man who truly didn't represent their interests. The Jedi who had sided with Mace to overthrow Mon Mothma and undermine the legitimacy of the Republic are arrested by the clones. Most of them do not resist. The ones who do are stunned and forced into cuffs. When the senators return to the Senate building, Mon Mothma thanks Anakin and his forces for their actions to restore democracy to the galaxy. Anakin ends up returning to Naboo to raise his kids with Padme after thanking the Chancellor for her gracious accolades. And he doesn't want anything to do with the Jedi Order again. He's a good father, and he teaches his children about all aspects of the Force, along with how to be decent people. Padme also teaches them these same values, along with informing them about politics and the way that the galaxy works. Anakin calls Ahsoka back to help him with their training, knowing that she would be a valuable anti-figure to these young Jedi. Of course, she obliges, happy to help out her old master, especially since now he'd left the constraints of the Order just as she had. Even though Mace Windu passed away, a ceremonial trial is held for him, and he is charged with treason against the Republic, along with most of his Jedi conspirators. Those who took part in his coup are placed in jail for life. A state funeral is held for Bail Organa, as he was a very popular senator with many friends. Anakin, Padme, Yoda, Obi-Wan, Plo Koon, Rex, Cody, and many others attend this funeral, and they weep for the loss of a great politician in the galaxy. Yoda eventually becomes one with the Force, and following his passing, Obi-Wan takes over as Grand Master of the Order, dedicated to maintaining Yoda's stance of peace, pacifism, and the true nature of following the Force with the Jedi Order. The clones either continue to serve in the military or retire well after Senator Chuchi introduces legislation that is approved by the Senate to grant soldiers citizenship, voting rights, and pensions in the Republic. Mon Mothma's administration slowly begins to demilitarize the Republic, and the clone contract with the Kaminoans is ended. Under Obi-Wan, the Jedi slowly start to regain the trust of the general public after what Windu had done. Luke and Leia are loved both by family, friends, and citizens of the galaxy. Luke starts pod racing, just like his father had, and Leia enters the political arena through the Junior Senator program. like her mother. Upon Mon Mothma's term limit expiry, Padme succeeds her as Chancellor. Her children are a little bit older now, and she has some leeway and freedom in order to follow her career pursuits. Her administration follows through with many of the initiatives that Mon Mothma's had started. The galaxy ends up in a peaceful state. Everything works out for the heroes, and democracy is restored. Perhaps in the end, Palpatine had been correct. In a way, the Jedi had been like the Sith, seeking to maintain power on the galactic scale. Obi-Wan would have to remember this going forward as Grand Master and ensure that nothing like this was ever to happen to the Jedi again. Hi there everyone, and thank you tons for watching a new episode of the Bantha Stew What If series. You know, I really want to add a little personal component to these outros here. So in the Discord server, I have created a new channel where you can literally ask me anything and I will answer any of the questions. Last week, they were asking if I was the same person as one of the members of the Discord server, who is also a team member for Bantha Stew, which is classified information, and I don't know if I can give that out. However, thank you for asking anyway, and I look forward to seeing more of your questions in the future. If you enjoyed this episode, I would highly recommend that you go and watch one of our other Bantha Stew What If episodes. What if Mace Windu died before Anakin arrived in the Senate chambers in Revenge of the Sith? That one's a doozy, and I'm sure that if you like this one, you're gonna love that one too. We have a Discord that is growing every single day and has active community members who are always chatting about all things Star Wars and all things Bantha Stew. I would absolutely love to see you there so that I can interact with each and every one of you and ensure that we're building a great Star Wars community together. So be sure to join our Discord. I hope that each and every one of you has an absolutely bantha-tacular rest of your day. And as always, I hope that you've gotten your daily delicious dose of Bantha Stew.